Nigeria is projected to have widest 5G coverage in Africa in 2022. Sugar Master Plan implementation to be rolled over, says National Sugar Development Council. Securities and Exchange Commission to partner real estate stakeholders on housing deficit. Plus, Chinese stocks decline as investors renew focus on Omicron variant. The program is Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Leah Kateng Babatunde. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has again sent a clear message to the relevant ministries, departments and agencies that their role is to support Nigerians who are engaged in different enterprises by creating a conducive and enabling business environment. This was during the MSME Clinic Stakeholders Review meeting at the Presidential Villa on how federal government agencies relate with micro, small and medium enterprises in the country. The Vice President explained that Nigerians are enterprising and need the right environment, which the MDAs must facilitate by removing constraints to make things easy for the MSMEs to do their business and not to become a stumbling block or a toll gate. Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, Mariam Katagum, praised the stakeholders and state governors for their collaboration and cooperation in holding MSME clinics. The meeting was attended by heads and representatives of agencies including SMIDEN, BOI, NEXIM, BOA, SON, FIRS, NAFDAC, and others. ECOWAS leaders are to collectively act and work in concert towards pragmatically addressing the socio-economic, political, security and environmental challenges bedeviling the sub-region with a view to providing the people better prospects in life. The African leaders were speaking at the 60th ordinary session of the Authority of Heads of State and Government of the ECOWAS Community of West African States in Abuja.
The new variant Omicron has already been found in 3 member states and has led to unfortunate impositions of travel bans by some countries, which are unjustified and unacceptable. Meanwhile, the availability of vaccines continues to remain a problem. We must continue to pursue national and regional efforts to fight COVID-19 and move rapidly into the domestic production of vaccines for the protection of our citizens and for the growth and development of our economy.
As a people, we aspire to create a borderless, peaceful, prosperous sub-region where people have the capacity to access and harness its resources through the creation of opportunities for sustainable development, job creation, and environmental preservation. Today's realities remind us of the need to continue to forge stronger solidarity in order to address the new challenges, including the current third wave of the pandemic and its Omicron variant.
The Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, says a major policy thrust of the Finance Bill 2022 is to close tax loopholes following the coming into effect of the Petroleum Industry Act (PIA). It was during her presentation at the public hearing on the bill before the House of Representatives Committee on Finance. Lami Ali reports.
The Finance Bill 2022, like the previous finance bills, is crafted to sustain the fiscal reforms introduced from 2019 to support the implementation of the budget. The bill covers 5 key policy areas to support the 2022 budget of economic growth and sustainability. Areas of reform include tax administration to make the Federal Inland Revenue Service more efficient, international taxation with regards to e-commerce and digital activities, and domestic revenue mobilization.
Our ongoing reforms of the past 6 years are yielding tangible results, and we need to do more. There's also the possibility of introducing new taxes, new tariffs, new levies, as the economy is now on a recovery path.
House Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila, who was represented, says the bill not only seeks to protect interests of investing public and businesses, but ensure accountability at all levels of government.
Finance Bill seeks to introduce strategic and broad-minded positive reforms that will engender best practice, statutorily check borrowing by local, state, and federal government.
The only way we can bring this country out of our present status is to look for genuine way of paying our taxes without even being coerced or without laws being made for it.
Now, the Finance Bill proposes changes and updates to some of the provisions of the following pieces of legislation: Capital Tax Gain Tax Act, Companies Income Tax Act, Personal Income Tax Act, Tertiary Education Trust Fund Act, among others. And to discuss the bill, of course, the 2021 bill and 2022 bill that aims to support the implementation of the 2022 federal budget by proposing key reforms on specific taxation, customs, excise, fiscal, and other relevant laws is an economist, Tifa Abraham. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you very much, Leah. Nice to meet you.
It's been a very, very dusty day in Abuja this morning.
Yeah, it's been. And that's bad for small businesses that wake up early to supply things on the road. It also affects their revenue and affects small businesses. So we hope that they also find a way to model the effect of weather on their businesses as well.
Oh, yes. Great. Yes. So on the business of the day today, what will be your thinking towards the 2021, 2022, the bills?
Okay, great. The Finance Bill 2021 is the third in a row since President Muhammadu Buhari's administration introduced it in 2019. And the naming of the bill is usually funny. 2019 Finance Bill is for 2020.
Exactly.
2020 Finance Bill is for 2021. Then 2021 Finance Bill is for 2022.
Yes.
So most times we miss it when we name it. So this is 2021 Finance Bill. By the time it is passed, it will become 2021 Finance Act. Now, this particular amendment, like I said, is the third in a row. The first being 19, 20, and now 21. It seeks to amend 12 laws on taxes. 12 alone just signals that we have a lot of tax laws that we need to punch into place to ensure that they are streamlined into ensuring that they all work towards bringing in more revenue for the government. And that is why every year you keep seeing the managers of the Nigerian economy thinking around this length of taxes we have to see how we can remove hurdles and to ensure that we have block all sorts of tax leakage in order to ensure that everything that is supposed to be taxed in Nigeria generates revenue, and that revenue flows into government purse in order to support the revenue challenge we've been experiencing in financing our annual budget.
Okay, now let's look at tax equity. The bill is suggesting, of course, to tighten the noose around tax evaders and defaulters. How will this bring about equity in taxation? Okay,
great. Already, the many taxes we have does not ensure that it stops the tax tap from leaking. For instance, before this 2021 finance bill, it was possible for people with existing businesses in Nigeria, foreigners with existing business in Nigeria, to just sell off all their shares, repatriate all their profits, and leave without the country benefiting from any form of tax. In this proposed 2021 finance bill, it is proposed that amendment to the capital gains tax will include such that anybody who has that kind of business and sells all his or her shares will be liable to tax, except such persons have evidence of fixed investment back home in Nigeria. So you see, the idea is about closing any gap in legislation that allows for smart tax evaders to take advantage of our existing legal framework. So by the time that you introduce that clause by saying except the person has or the business has a fixed investment base in Nigeria. So the concept there is to ensure that nobody can just sell off his or her shares all and repatriate. But you sell, the country gains from it in form of tax, or the country makes you reinvest a large part of it back in the country, and by so doing, you create jobs and more income will be created. So these are some of the touchlights that this finance bill puts on the 12 laws that it mapped out, which includes capital gains tax, as you rightly said, education tax, even value-added tax. For the value-added tax, it also went further to say that it made it clear when FIRS should collect certain kind of tax. As I think about it specifies the date. All these kind of regulatory gaps will make smart people say that, oh, we've not paid our tax up to this date or by so time because the act is not clear. So it's about looking out for loopholes in our existing tax legislation and saying how we can block them towards ensuring that our revenue buffer has no leakage in any form.
Yeah, of course. I've always had to wonder when we see how portfolio investors, when the market, our capital market now, rises to a certain point, and then before you know what's happening, they just pull out.
They sell.
Yes, and then they sell off.
Yeah, sell
and then
exactly.
And then you just see that the stocks are just falling, and it will take a lot of effort again to build back.
So, so with this kind of finance bill now, such moves will no longer be proposed bill, you leave, the country loses. And it introduces a lot of shocks in investment equation. You know, when people just buy and sell the way they want, it makes the capital market very volatile, and volatility in the stock market affects the overall capital market. And don't forget, that capital market is a long-term market for funds. And by the time we have a lot of volatility in that area, it begins to affect long-term investment prospect, which is bad for overall investment financing and for government revenue generation as well.
Now, you started off with the small businesses, the particular people out there who these weather conditions are going to have some severe impacts on them. Dragging these people into the tax net now has been so difficult. How can we break it down to a level that these people out there can really understand what's going on?
Okay, first of all, tax is a source of revenue to the government. It's a fiscal move. It's a fiscal policy component. So usually we have government expenditure. Government expenditure seeks to use public spending to implement projects and programs, cover recurrent costs, which has personnel and overheads. Now, but because source of government revenue, because government always has a lot of things to do in education, in health, in agriculture, in infrastructure, in telecoms, in power, in electricity, everywhere, the need for government spending always seems to rise more than its revenue. Now, to raise that revenue aspect, what government does is that if the economy is in maybe like recession, the government can cut down taxes, the government can, in a way, also halt subsidies. Now, but if the government now needs more revenue due to increase in economic growth, government can choose to raise taxes. Now, that tax is part of a source of government revenue. So we get revenue through taxes or through borrowing, external and domestic. Now, for the revenue aspect, using tax as a case study, our tax to GDP ratio in Africa is one of the lowest. Not because we have a low tax rate per se, but because our collection there are a lot of loopholes, leakages in our tax system. The value-added tax you and I pay each time we buy those things and pay with our POS, hardly, we are not too sure that those business outlets remit to the government. Now, these are even small players. Now, big investors, because of the Petroleum Industry Act, for instance, that have privatized and rejigged the petroleum sector. What you have now is that big-time players can just sell off and move out overnight. This finance bill blocks leakages like that. And what that implies is that for small businesses, for small-scale businesses, the value-added tax already exempts many of them from this tax. You have to have a revenue or profit of about 25 million. Many of these to be taxable. Many of these small businesses don't have that size in terms of gain. Now, the Nigerian tax law protects small businesses. The concept is that they have no fear because the tax does not apply to them. What they need to deal with is the market where they operate, the fees and fines they pay at the gates, at Wuse Market, anywhere they operate. There are some revenue collectors around that area. Now, this is the next level in which our reform in our tax system should ensure that multiple taxes generally is prohibited, because this woman who sells something by the gate, or this boy who sells something by the gate, pays to the gate man, pays to the market regulators, pay to the other guys who pass, pay to non-state actors. So ensuring that tax reform also shines the light on small business to avoid that woman who sells Ntalive paying more than 2 fines or taxes will also be very important. But largely, this finance bill seeks to ensure that we block revenue leakages from taxes, especially from major players, and to ensure that our country gains in the context of revenue challenges in funding our annual budget. And right now, because of insecurity and the need to cover up for a lot of infrastructure gap, they need to catch up with our broadband target, they need to achieve a lot of targets for health, agriculture, women affairs, youth, women and children, vulnerable groups, persons with disabilities. All these things means more spending. They need to implement Safe School Initiative, means more spending. And for government to do that, government needs the revenue. Government is already maximizing the source of revenue from borrowing. This finance bill 2021 is also to ensure that the revenue source from tax is maximized, not necessarily by raising the tax rate, but ensuring that any source of leakage is blocked and whatever we can mop in is brought in into government revenue.
So now, talking about the infrastructure arm of it, initially we have, as at present, every tier of government, of course, is empowered to borrow for capital expenditure, but there's now an amendment to the Fiscal Responsibility Act. How would that act be affecting the tiers of government now?
Generally, no MDA can just do as they like. The Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, I've always said, serves like an overseeing ministry for these other MDAs. The government, and that is why following the budget process is very important. For ministries, departments, and agencies, they should be able to step up the capacity of their, let me say, chief economist of each MDA, who is able to study the economy globally and domestic, who is able to follow with policy documents from Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, and to see how it affects their own ministry, department, and agency in order to key into what government is doing. This is very important. So MDAs borrowing on their own shouldn't be something that is allowed. The Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning rolls out the budget call circular way before the budget bill is presented by the President, before a joint sitting of the National Assembly. And that budget call circular states or provides budget ceilings and every form of rules that is required, guidelines that are required for those MDAs to prepare their budget for that year. That is not the point where MDA should begin to engage the budget process. It should begin way back by having a needs assessment of the sector they cover, and by ensuring that those needs assessments fit into their medium-term sector strategy, so that overall, when Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning calls them for a meeting, they'll have robust input into the nation's national development plan, which the medium-term expenditure framework and FSP is derived from, before the budget cost circular comes out and everything fits into the annual budget, so as to ensure that as MDAs are implementing their project, overall we are achieving the National Development Plan and overall we are achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. But if MDAs grow on their own, it will become difficult to even push MDA to scale up their own efficiency unit that helps them to contribute to government revenue and government revenue generation. So that decision to halt MDA borrowing, for me, is really important. Anything financing of projects and programs should be coordinated through the Federal Ministry of Finance. And that's why the Federal Ministry of Finance does not fail to use its power of warrants or authority to incur expenditure to check what MDAs are doing. Fiscal spending must feed into an arrowhead to ensure that we attain overall development goal for the country.
Okay, I must sincerely thank you, Dr. Tifa, for always making time.
Thank you very much, Leah.
Program. Yes, to have a nice day.
My pleasure.
Surviving COVID-19 is next.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
For many small business owners, the COVID-19 pandemic and the attendant lockdown last year may have been a great setback to their businesses. But Joy Chinwendu saw an opportunity. She began selling clothes, footwears, and other household items with her car and made good business.
You know, if you go to them and show them what you have, even though they don't want to buy that moment, you know, they know that my wardrobe is empty. I need to change my wardrobe. And this woman come to my domot, you know, it's an opportunity for them to buy, you know. So that is what I really think about, that make me to be going round to meet them where they are.
Like other small business owners, expanding her business will be a dream come true.
If I'm opportune to have such loan, is to contribute more to my business, you know. Maybe the one that I'm buying before that I will wait until people pay month end is something that will make me, maybe I'm buying two, it's something that will make me to buy more, like 10 or 12, to be able to give it to all my clients.
2 years on, she is glad she took that decision and prays an end to the pandemic.
This COVID-19 is out of way. To make the business to expand them more and to be able to touch more offices, more clients also.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central.
7 years into the implementation of the 10-year Sugar Master Plan, indications have emerged that the plan may have to roll over due to prevailing socio-economic implications. Speaking in Abuja, Executive Secretary of the National Sugar Development Council, Zach Adidiji, say, though tremendous investments in the sector have been achieved over time, scarcity of foreign exchange and insufficient logistics are slowing the wheels of progress. With 3 more years to go, over 200 billion naira worth of investments have been achieved through the backward integration program, with thousands of jobs being created in line with the presidential initiative on jobs creation.
If we fix the backward integration, the 11 million metric ton shortage we have in Africa, it is what Nigeria have capacity to fulfill. So in master plan percentage, apart from the consciousness and the well-structured issue it has brought, so we've moved on in what we set out to. So the last 3 years, what we have in plan to do, one is to review and to question some of our assumptions, whether that is what is required or not. And lastly, which I may not want to reveal now, is that by God's grace, we will have to extend the implementation period.
And of course, Nigerian stocks are opening beautiful this morning, and outside home Chinese stocks decline as investors renew focus on Omicron variant. Boste Eva reports.
Chinese stocks declined on Tuesday, tracking other losses in Asia-Pacific markets as the Omicron variant returned to focus. Meanwhile, Bitcoin prices continued to tumble after some losses overnight. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index led losses, tumbling 1.47%. Mainland Chinese shares were also in negative territory. The Shanghai Composite was down 0.70%. Japan's Nikkei 225 also lost lost 0.73%. U.S. stock indices were little changed in early morning trading on Tuesday after the major averages started the week in the red. Futures countries tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 32 points. S&P 500 futures were up as well as Nasdaq 100 futures. European stocks are expected to open in positive territory. UK's FTSE index is seen opening 18 points higher at 7,231. Germany's DAX 17 points higher. CAC 40 of France is also pointing slightly upward. Sentiment in Africa returns caution amid the continuing spread of the Omicron COVID variants. Markets were mixed on Monday and expected to pick up this morning when the numbers come in. Boss said they able. Business Express.
Thank you, Bossa, and this is where we end this edition of Business Express. The program returns tomorrow at 3 p.m. My name is Leah Kateng Pavatunde. Do have a safe day out there.
This vaccine is safe and it has been certified safe and usable by NAFTA.
Welcome to Abuja, the place that unites Nigeria.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed